Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We are here in new episode with Strong Body, Strong Mind Foundation. Today, we will talk about rebuilding community in America. My name is Jesus Rojas. I am here with my partner.
My name is Christian Flores.
You're Ellie.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Today, we have a lot of guests. I wanna share your names.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Goldman, and I'm the Program and Partnership Director for Social Enterprise Minneapolis St Paul.
Hello, I am Sarah Cherwin-Hole. I'm a psychologist. I have a practice in Chanhassen. I also am a professor and supervisor at the University of St. Thomas.
I'm Michelle Sharp. I'm the founder and content creator for Meet the Minnesota Makers, which is a website and social media platforms that promote local food, farms, artists, and artisans throughout the state of Minnesota.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. I'm Francisco Segovia, Executive Director with Communities Organizing Power and Action for Latinos, COPAL.
Hi, how are you? My name is Maggie Winter, and I own MK Consulting, and it's a small business PR and social media coaching company.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Charles Wright. I am a co-founder of a nonprofit organization called BPA. Stands for Black Political Action. It's an organization designed to get more minorities involved in politics. I'm also a board member of another nonprofit organization called Youth Civic Leaders, and that's an organization designed to bring more awareness to civic engagement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for being here. That's my first question for us for start the program. Okay, what makes a strong and connected community in today's digital world? What makes a strong and connected community in today's digital world? Thank you. You want to start? It's a big extensive question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and start. I think what makes a strong connection is using it to organize community. So whether it's a Facebook event or an Eventbrite or things like that, being able to organize things so people can find out about it. But the most important thing is bringing it off social media or off the digital world and meeting in person. Do you have something to say?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking, it is a pretty interesting time, to say the least, right? Yes. So much media, so much to digest, so much anyone can say anything. And now we have to think about, is this factual? Yes. Is this something that is meaningful to me, or is just something that is not? And so through this and through our work as an organization, a Latino organization, we have been thinking a lot about how do we have a Latino-centric worldview that allows us to connect to each other from that particular worldview. And then we realized that doesn't exist. So we had to recreate that because we see the world from our own perspective. And so every community has a perspective. If you are African, you have an African perspective. If you are European, you have an European-centric perspective. So what is to be a Latino perspective? And it's something that we keep digging and trying to figure out how we see ourselves in social media and how do we talk to each other, understanding that Latin America, it is a huge continent with so many cultures. So the question is pretty interesting from that perspective, but the main thing to me is how do we, as people that we consume or produce media, how do we ensure that what we are consuming is factual? And this is so important in today's time.
And I think what you're saying is so important too, because I think one of the things that makes it really challenging to have connection and community in real life or in person is the thought of, where am I safe, or can I, people get afraid of sharing their voice. Am I going to be judged? Is this a place where I'm going to find connection or find rejection? And so sometimes going into, the digital world or into social media even, where things maybe are more explicitly laid out of, hey, this is a community where our worldviews may be aligned, it feels like a place where people can find that connection point. And to Maggie's point, I think what can be really helpful and powerful is then finding connection there and then bringing it in real life also.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I was at a a youth mental health convention last week, and they were talking about the power of social media, and they were saying that, you know, especially in this generation, social media pretty much it creates how people do anything. You know what I mean? Like the peer pressure, just everything about social media. That's what they're all learning from online. So how do we, with all of the rhetoric that is online right now, how do we weed through that and allow our kids to see, you know, more positive, you know, things that are on the internet? Because I think that's what's important. And what also a lot of the youth need to understand is when people post online, a lot of it is just the pretty pieces, you know, of, you know what I mean? It's not really reality. So that in itself can cause a lot of peer pressure and some of the kids thinking that they have to live up to these images that they see online, and that's not necessarily the case. They need to realize that people aren't really posting, you know, what goes on in their real life. So just keep that in mind when they're scrolling and trying to look at all these people that are always smiling and happy and thinking everything's together when life is more complex than that. So I think it's very important that the youth realize that and understand that, and just try to watch imagery that's more positive than negative, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think, Maggie, what you're saying, you know, you take what's happening offline and bring it into real life so that you can have that culture that you're trying to build within a community, like Francisco is saying. And I think it's really hard to create trust right now virtually. And not necessarily like we're having a Zoom call or something like that. It's when you are curating and you are using platform algorithms to play the game. You know, I think that we're very smart as, you know, people in general. People have adapted to so many different things, and this is one of the things that we've adapted to. We're trying to play that game. And I find in my work, working to amplify the stories of social enterprises, many of whom are in this room, it's really about showcasing the good work that they're doing, but also making those connections to partners and saying like, hey, we have a platform, let's amplify what you're doing. So connecting the dots, I think, is a really crucial part in sharing what Charles was saying is like the good stuff. Like, yes, you can use this kind of platform. Maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's, you know, what is it, Blue Sky, Sky Blue? Can't remember. Yeah, like it could be a new platform, but yeah, definitely just like amplify what other people are doing that's good too, because that might also help, you know, share good news.
It's so interesting listening to all of your observations on it, and I can say, I came to social media having almost no experience with it until I started using it for my business, because I had a desire to share these stories beyond the original platform. And so it started as just a hypothesis, like, could I create an intentional space online to share the stories of these small businesses without lip syncing, without having to be on all the time? You know, would there be a space for this community? And it's really exciting that the answer is yes. But then I find I have to be very selective about how I use social media. That if I'm looking within that community, within food, within producers, within artists and artisans, and they are lifting each other up and it is positive, I feel one way when I come off social media. And then if I lose focus and I'm just getting sucked in, and then I come away and I wonder what just happened to the last 20 minutes of my life. Right? And the algorithm and what it suggests there, like, I don't know where it comes up with these things. And so, like, just who you choose, where you sit at lunch, or, you know, your neighbors, like, being intentional with those online communities, whether it's a forum for a conversation or that social media, I think that's an important piece of your own filtering.
Can we use social media as a tool for positive community? engagement instead of division?
Yes, you absolutely can. And what I tell a lot of my clients is you have to be very intentional about that. Just like you were saying, Michelle, of like you have to show up, and that's what you want to be able to do. I know, like my little corner of the internet, I only allow happiness. I only allow positivity. And that's my boundary. And I think if you can create those boundaries and not get sucked in to the negativity that can live there and thrive sometimes, I think that's where, yes, you absolutely can. If the question is it easy? That answer is no.
I think the other thing that's really exciting about social media is the fact that you can connect with people from all over, right? And that your community doesn't just have to be where you live. Again, that trust question and making sure who you're talking with is really who you're talking with, and vetting those communities. But no matter how niche your interest is, there's a space. And I know, personally, like I've connected with producers up in Embarrass, Minnesota, or Ely, and like that's not easy to access from the Twin Cities, right? And you can communicate and connect and bring them in as part of a bigger community. But I think like we have to learn how to put on those filters, because none of the platforms really are going to do that for you. And I think that's a part of the social media literacy, to avoid that division, right? Without just like sheltering in your corner, but to be aware of the bigger world. Yeah. Oh, it's such a minefield. It really is.
I just wanted to add to that. It's definitely very important to raise awareness on the importance of the dangers that are on, social media as well. For an example, if you look at some other countries, they actually do filter, and they only allow, a certain age where you're only allowed certain kind of content. That's something it doesn't happen here in the United States. So there definitely should be more focus and awareness around policing social media and online platforms. But also, one thing that for the youth to look at is, depends on how healthy their mind state is as well, because that determines what they want to even engage with and what their interests are from the first place. So, if we focus on, healthy family upbringing, just bringing more awareness around the dangers of social media, I think that will play a positive role and positive impact as well, because there's definitely a lot of manipulation and propaganda online that the youth should be aware of. But again, it comes back to, where's that youth's mindset at in the first place, because that will determine a lot as to what they decide to engage in.
That's an excellent point, because it actually, in the research, they talk about that, about how the mindset or how someone's feeling in for adolescents in particular plays a big role, and it's really nuanced, but like a big role in how social media then impacts them. So if someone's really struggling and feeling badly about themselves, they may be seeking out content that actually kind of feeds into that feeling, and it can be really hard to know, what people are saying for people to know, especially an adolescent brain that's not fully developed, to be able to know. I mean, it's hard for me to know, but hard to know how to discern or put a boundary for themselves around it, because it is created to be addictive and hard to put down. And so that is, I'm glad you spoke to that. I think that's hugely impactful. And on the other side, it for social media, when folks are feeling maybe not struggling with that particular thing, maybe they find someone putting words to something that's really uplifting for them, and they feel like, oh, someone's putting words to something that I feel too. I'm not alone. And so there's that edge of it as well. Really kind of complicated in that way.
I wonder if I could do a quick test. Something that's really resonating with me is how we've kind of skirted around this fear. as well with social media. And I know we're doing live video and a podcast, but maybe like raise your hand if you've ever felt trepidation or like you've been unsure whether or not you should post something, but you feel strongly about it. Everybody, yeah. And as young people, as our lovely hosts, like, have you felt that fear of like, should I post this? Can I even like something that I agree with because it's part of my value system that I'm figuring out maybe? Like, yeah, I mean, I think about that and I'm like, people have to censor themselves even if they feel strongly about something because we don't know what is divisive. We don't know what is necessarily going to blow up as something that is, on one end of a spectrum. And is that going to make enemies out of our connections? Or is that going to make enemies of the partners that we've created or the people who sponsor us, So I think about how there's fear associated. And, Charles, you were talking about the dangers. You're forming your own values, but those values could be blocked in a way. And we have no idea sometimes. So I definitely feel that censorship. And it's hard to kind of know how to express oneself on social media these days.
So I think it's important to keep in mind that social media, like a computer, like a shovel, it's a tool. And sometimes we confuse that's a tool. It's a mean to an end. And as a mean to an end, also it should be handled by us in a proper way. Oftentimes what is proper can be questionable, but it's a tool. But also I think in human communications, contradictions happens. We can agree or disagree, and that's not a problem, I believe. Disagreeing allows us to potentially get to a better place if we know how to disagree and if we know how to respect each other's ideas. The issue comes when I'm gonna use social media to generate a worldview of one group of people against another group of people that has a consequence for the people, for the group of people who becomes the subject. And as a Latino person, for instance, in this particular moment, social media has been a tool to create this demon, this monster of a community that has consequences for a lot of people in our community. And and even for people who are not even Latinos have consequences because just the fact of being brown means something, right? So in that aspect, we cannot ignore that the way that social media and media in general overall has been utilized to create this worldview that oftentimes is not inclusive, that is exclusive. And so we need to be alert of how that is presented to us and how we decide to use it. Because again, while it can be a beautiful tool for something good, also can be a tool for something that can damage or hurt other people.
How do we move from digital engagement to real world action that builds stronger communities?
Thank you. Maybe I'm gonna start from this side.
Do you want to answer that?
How can we use social media? Which question was it? I'm sorry.
Ask the question again.
I'm sorry.
Okay, how do we move from digital engagement to real world action that builds stronger communities?
Oh, is that for me?
No, that's for everyone.
Oh, that's for me? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, there's several ways to bring a strong community, but one, like I mentioned earlier, it's your upbringing. That's very important. That people come up in a positive environment, because that definitely will play a role in the outcome of how you engage in society. But I wanted to touch up on what the gentleman said about the effects of the impact that social media can have when groups turn against each other. I think that could be a time for people that disagree or see that people are being bullied online, I think people should, take that opportunity to, raise awareness yourself on your own platforms, you know what I mean, to combat that, if that makes any sense. I think once you do that, you'll actually find a lot more people who might recognize that online, and they might share similar views with you, and you guys can connect that way. Social media is like being on the street somewhere. There's so much going on in different communities or whatever, so you just have to be careful as to where, you would like to be. But how do we make a tight-knit community? I think we should start to engage in different communities. You know what I mean? Like, try to understand what other walks of life are about, different cultures, find some kind of interest, because we all are from different walks of life, and a lot of times because of maybe our upbringing, we're sheltered, and all we know is people from our community. But if we really want to make real change, I think we should get to know people from other walks of life, and that will help and assist in trying to understand different cultures, and maybe that way, people will come together. So.
And just to build on that, because I love what you said, what I tell my clients all the time, and people when I'm teaching them about using social media, is it's really important that you follow people who don't look like you, who don't live where you live, and who don't always think the way you think. Because then you aren't in that tunnel of just living in your own space, living in your bubble. I mean, I am from upstate New York, and I remember moving to the Twin Cities and being like, I get to live in a place where there's 2 cities. I can do dinner in St. Paul and like go out in Minneapolis. I came here, and the look that I got from Minnesotans of like, hang on a second, you plan on going both cities in one night? It's wild. And so I think especially here in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota, it is really important to kind of pop those bubbles and walk in the shoes of other people and really understand what other lenses. So I love what you said.
Well, I think this question is a really good one, how to move from digital engagement to real world action. And when you think about what tangible action can be in place that builds stronger community, I think even this conversation, frankly, is part of it. So putting a voice to the importance of action and community and intentionality behind doing that, and being able to I can't think of a better word than intentionality. Authenticity. Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, being authentic in that, and having conversations.
It is funny that I think one of the greatest strengths, to like this conversation, right, is when social media allows things to happen that move offline. And that, and that's not what social media wants you to do. Social media wants you to stay glued right there and just keep scrolling. But I'm here tonight because of someone who I initially met online, who I then met in person, who I've collaborated with other things, who introduced me to an organizer, right? And it makes possible a different form of networking and connection. And that's really exciting. But when I think about some of the best parts of the community that I get to help connect, it's when I move people offline, or even if it's just introductions over email, right? It's moving out of that space, but we initially found each other in the same room as whatever social media. So.
Doctor, share something?
No, estoy bien. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, thank you for your opinions and your different point of view. Right now, I keep with a focus question. Okay, how can young people use social media to create meaningful change in their communities? Focusing in your people.
should ask you that.
I mean, I feel like if we could answer that, everything would be okay, right? Like, I feel like that's a really big question. That's like the question. But I think it's leaning on the youth. I think like what you guys are doing, where you are leading with a positive heart and showing up as your authentic selves, I think that's really important. And I think, like you've been saying, is making sure you're also around adults that are leading with that example too. But you guys are doing awesome, by the way.
I totally agree. I mean, when we came into this place, we saw so many young people managing the cameras, you interviewing us. I think that's a message that we want to, that we should enjoy seeing a lot of young people communicating, expressing ideas, their worldviews, how they want to see this world. That by the way, you are going to take care of this world because some of us are going to be gone, you know. But I think that's the way that you're engaging and in the importance of understanding. And you know, it triggers me the question about the filters, because we need to keep working on those filters, right? So how do I say, okay, I already went through these social media so many times, and I think I need to stop these and go out and socialize. And that is a tricky thing, and I think it's going to be harder for young people because of how media is becoming so accessible right now, which is a good tool. Again, it's a tool, right? But it's a tool also that can create so many other things. But again, yeah, what you are doing is awesome.
Yeah, hopefully I'm not taking this in a different direction, but I think about how even just like 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I was kind of like, okay, I have to make everything perfect in order for it to be meaningful. And everything I do, you know, it should just be like, I need to think through every single thing. You don't. Like, perfection is not even important. It's curiosity. And you ask and you listen and you build things that actually matter. And so if you make something using digital tools, whatever it might be, and it has some kind of effect on your community, immediate, you know, or wider, ask questions. Like, I did this really great training on human-centered design. And the first thing you do is you really just observe. Like, you see if you are recognizing a problem and something that you might have an idea to fix. But at the same time, you have to create something that is going to last or be meaningful and used by the community it's intended for. So perfection's not the answer. It's curiosity and always asking questions throughout the entire process. So technology can always be leveraged for good, but it's not always going to be the answer.
I just wanted to add to the how can young people use social media to create meaningful change in their communities. I mean, kind of like what you guys are doing on this panel today. Just like the organizations I'm a part of, we pretty much, this is what we were created for, to try to encourage more young people to get involved. An example would be being activists. You know, a lot of the kids or the youth don't realize the power that they really hold. I mean, they're actually trying to push some bills right now to allow people at the age of 16 to vote. So that might be a thing coming up here in the near future. So with that being said, if you realize the power that the youth has, you know, if you have issues that you might want to address, you know, become an activist and use the online social media platforms as a tool, you know, to raise awareness. I can tell you right now that there's definitely a shortage in focus on youth in politics right now. But I think with more leadership roles from youth members themselves, that can change. Numbers matter. The politicians, they react to numbers, you know. So what I would do if I was part of the youth, I would go out to my community and find out, you know, what their needs are. And I would just raise awareness, you know, become that young leader. You know, that's very effective, and that's what we need right now, is more young youth leaders to be involved in the political process. You know, raise more awareness of civic engagement, and I think that's part of a tool that can be used for a positive way.
You're making me want to be a youth again. I think there are so many levels too of it, and sometimes people feel kind of frozen in there's so much to do or so many places I want to impact change or impact the community. And I think remembering too that there can be micro moments that have ripples is really important. And our nervous systems even are constantly assessing for signs of danger or signs of safety. Is this a moment where I can feel a sense of calm or peace, or is this something that's a stressful situation or even dangerous? And so there's, I think her name is Deb Dana, had talked about this concept of glimmers. So looking for glimmers, signs of little moments of safety that your nervous system can attune to in the community. And so being a glimmer, whether that's smiling at someone walking down the street or noticing a sense of safety that you see, I think can, again, have ripples of more safety.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I have one more about the youths. Is what advice do you have for teens who feel isolated or disconnected despite being active on social media? Thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of what I elaborated on earlier. Youth need to be aware of the fact that majority of the social media is just entertainment. Again, just don't fall to the peer pressure. There's so many false advertisement, false pictures, false everything that could really create a down spiral for some people who might not feel that they're in that type of situation. So what I would say is just understand that a lot of the things that you're seeing are not real. So, and a lot of people, more than you might know, are going through similar things that you might be going through yourself. So with that being said, just know that a lot of social media is propaganda, period.
I think just following that, I think it's really interesting that we've decided that reality TV, we all accept that that's fake, that it's arbitrary and constructed and, it's ridiculous, right? It's a soap opera. But for some reason, we assume that all social media is true. And it's as bad as reality TV or maybe even worse, right, of what's curated in that. And so I think when you consume it, the people in this room aside, our content, of course, but in general, when you're consuming it or getting to know someone who's producing it, of like, let's assume this is all constructed and get to know them better and then decide, if it's actually a valid source. But otherwise, just assume it's reality TV.
That is I like that connection to it. I think that's really helpful. My other advice would be, if you see something, instead of commenting, ask the person in real life. Like, oh, I saw that you posted this. What were you doing that day? What else did you do before that? Use it as a conversation starter. I think sometimes there's this, and even in adults, there's this weird, people don't acknowledge what you posted online, even though you guys are friends online. And in real life, it's such a separate thing. And I think reminding people that we're all 3D. We're all here, even if it is on social media.
I think that social media has been a place for people to find belonging because they're looking for examples of what they want to be and what feels good. You're like, oh, I want to be this successful. I think, what is it, most young people these days want to be an influencer. That is the goal, right? I don't know if you've heard of that, but being an influencer is that's where you make it. And it's all, yeah. But I come back to values. I work with businesses that leverage your values and you get to kind of give back, right? And I think about how those are entrepreneurs who created something because they had a value that they strongly had or believed in, and it matched a need in the community. It's for positive social or environmental benefits. They're building community through business. And I think about that as another form of entrepreneurship. And in order to have that, you need to have belonging within your values and yourself and understand, what do I care about? Is it animals? Is it healthcare? Is it, education of young people? Whatever it might be, I think you have to give yourself the space to know what you care about. And I don't know that we always give that to our young people. But if you know your values like that, then you can find those channels where you're like, I want to follow this person because they truly, like, they're an example of that, but make it your own. Like, I think that's another part of this, is just, what's your spin? Like, how can you be someone who's part of that pie? But it comes down to values so that you can feel belonging and create belonging for yourself and others.
So can attempt. I think obviously the society has changed. I grew up in a small town, my home country, where every afternoon around this time, 6 p.m., we'll go to the corner and talk meaningless things. So about 9 p.m., everyone will go home and to sleep, right? But every evening at 6 p.m., we'll be socializing. So our ability to socialize, to talk to each other, to say hi to everyone, or every person that you see, is changing, because now we stay home, we open social media, and we connect from there. And that obviously can provoke isolation as well, because you feel lonely. On the other side, every Sunday morning, I was able to tune in my computer and listen a radio show from my home country. And I was doing things at home and listening the commercials, the music, the conversation, and it felt me so connected to home. So that was the use of social media. And then you will hear things. And we have a radio station, by the way, at work. And we try to connect our radio station with radio shows in other parts of Latin America, because it's a mean to connect as well. So I think the battle that we all are going to have is, how do we provoke the idea that we need to keep talking to each other? You can use social media, but keep that human relationship that is so essential for continuing being human. Without that social connection, we are not going to be human anymore. We are going to be something else. So fight for that connection, either through whatever means, but essentially connect, sympathize, be in solidarity with other human beings, because that allows us to fight the isolation. And as has been said so many times, imperfection is part of the game here. Yeah. So we are imperfect, and that's what makes us beautiful as humans. And when we see that perfection, just smile, because it's not true. It is the moment that the camera captures, that moment when you are smiling, not the moment when you are crying, not the moments where you feel sad, not the moments where you are like, you don't know what to do. So it is essential that we, as people, think about that. And obviously our young people realize that has been said, there are so many social pressures, and we need to keep building those filters that allows our young people to have a normal life, normal within the context of being who they are, and managing that social pressure that is so unneeded, and that drives our young people to maybe do things that they shouldn't be doing.
What are some things people can do in their daily lives to help strengthen in-person communities?
I need only two. We have other specific questions for everyone. I want to do it. Okay. Thank you.
I'll go quickly with this one. Being willing to be vulnerable, to what you were speaking to as well. It's okay to be imperfect with each other. Sometimes online you get the ability to do a draft and erase it and write the perfect response via text, or whatever it might be. It's okay for it to be messy in real life.
One more. Side.
You want me to talk? I didn't know you wanted me to talk.
Okay.
I don't even know this question. I'm sorry. Well, like I stated before, I'm all about creating positive leaders And I think that, moving forward, that if you have a positive mindset, that's pretty much, that'll carry you forward in a lot of the journeys that you have, in front of you. So just try to be as positive as you can. You know what I mean? Be thoughtful, and I believe that'll get you through a lot of, moments in life. Just stay positive, period.
Okay, thank you. Right now, we keep with one question for Maggie Goldman. Yareli, got it.
What role do social enterprises play in fostering stronger local communities?
Yeah, great question. So, if you don't know what a social enterprise is, it's really a business that has a core mission. It's really built and structured around a social or an environmental cause. They could be selling socially, sourcing, staffing, or sharing. So, a couple of examples like for sourcing, Repowered, if you've heard of them, they're just down the street here. They sell electronics that have been refurbished, but you can also give your old electronics, and they also have previously incarcerated folks working there. So it's rehabilitation, getting back into the job force, and getting really great community. And then Ambit Media Company, I know Chuck was invited and he couldn't make it tonight, but I shout out to Chuck. He's creating a new social media platform, and it's really about how do we make sure that media stays local and we're getting the right information. Right, I mean, it's community generated. So I would say, like, with social enterprises, what makes them really important for our communities is that they hold really high standards for making sure that they're creating positive impact. So a lot of them will do some kind of impact reporting. They'll have maybe B Corp. They might be B Corp certified, but really it's about getting more employment from local folks in the community around a cause, and it might be around a specific community, and also just like higher quality products because people really care. It's your corner shop, your neighbor, and also it keeps money local. So I guess I just really wanted to bring up the point that when we talk about strong communities, we're talking about employment, we're talking about creating jobs and keeping money local, and also just like products and services that are filling a need in the community. And social enterprises are both a nonprofit or a for-profit. They're going to try and be around for a while, and so they have that stability, and they're not just grant-based. They're also selling something. So they're super important.
That's great, thank you. Right now, we will go in with Francisco Segovia.
How does COPAL MN use social media to empower and organize Latinx communities?
So we have been using social media, and from the moment that we created the organization, that is about 7 years old organization, we also did much emphasis to collect data. So we have about 50, maybe 51,000 records that we oftentimes ensure that are updated. So the idea was this concept of what is it that we want as a first-generation immigrant to the Minnesota, and I didn't come here for the weather, so I didn't even know that the weather was this kind of weather. But the moment for us was, at one moment we are Minnesotans, for instance, and we were just playing a couple of weeks ago with another group of immigrants. When do you feel that you are Minnesotan? What moment do you feel like you are here, that this is home? And this is a pretty interesting question for the first generation. Because it's like you have one leg back home and you have another leg here. You support two economies. You send money home. You may be invisible in both economies. And but then what is our vision for that world, for us to be able to say this is home and this is where our kids are going to grow, and we want the best for our kids as well. So we began by us being able to articulate our mission by saying, what is it that we want? What we want is to live a dignified life in Minnesota. And so that was pretty simple, right? So, I mean, everyone wants to live a dignified life. No one wants something else, right? But then the question came, and how do we achieve that? And that's where we have been articulating that vision. At the end, this is the life we put that vision that this is what we want. And then we ask people to join us, to mobilize, to kind of knock down those barriers that doesn't allow us to achieve those goals. Can be in terms of education. We have we do organizing legislative work around issues of education, healthcare, driver licenses, which was so essential, and many other ones that are not allowing our community to achieve that better good. Now, from there, you can tell the story that is so sad, that is, poor us, or a story that doesn't add up, that doesn't help us to mobilize people. Right. I mean, it probably impact a sector, but not everyone that we want. So from that perspective is trying to articulate a vision, and obviously when you have a vision for the greater good that you want, you are gonna have others that are gonna target you. When someone targets us, we engage in a positive way, trying to say, no, you can join us as well. Because at the end of the day, we want the best for everyone, because that's what I believe means to live in a Minnesota where everyone can thrive. And so it becomes a vision for everyone to that end.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question for Maggie Winter. Up. I know. Thank you.
Present.
Okay, what digital strategies have you seen work best for building strong communities?
I love this question because this is something that I work really hard with my clients, and collaboration online, collaboration in person, lifting up. I think it's really important to be collaboration over competition. So whether you're in the same lane or not, always bringing people together. And I think that can look very different. So like digitally, maybe there's a chambers of commerce and you bring all of the businesses together, and then they do some sort of like walking thing, like passport thing, and then they show it online? Or is it in person where they just use, again, Eventbrite, they use Facebook events, things like that, to talk about an event that's happening? But yeah, I just think bottom line, collaboration, bringing people together. And I always say it's not about gaining more followers online either. It's really about showing up for the people who are already there.
Thank you. We keep with Michelle Sharp. How does Meet the Minnesota Makers use social media to support local artisans and businesses? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It was that initial experiment, right? Like, was there a space to create this community? And then it's all about shortening the gap between people who want to support local and our local businesses. And if you ask people if they're interested in local businesses, absolutely, right? But it's a little bit harder. And so social media is one of my tools to shorten that gap and put people directly in touch with those small businesses. And that collaboration piece, right? When you can bridge different audiences and bring them together into those small businesses, that's when you can start to see impact, right? Can you drive those sales? Can you drive newsletter signups? And part of it, again, goes to then driving them off of social media, into those newsletters, into the storefronts, onto the websites, right? And to build those deeper connections. But it's all about shortening that gap.
Okay, we keep. Thank you. We keep with Sarah Sherwin. Sarah? I know you're Sarah. Only for, like school. You say, hey, who, Jesus Roja? Jesus Roja, hey, Jesus Roja. Okay. How does excessive social media use impact mental health and real life relationships?
Such a great question and such a big question. So there's a lot of nuance in this. There's a lot of research, and a lot of psychologists and mental health workers are talking about this more and more. So I think one of the biggest things to look at is anything with the word excessive. Excessive social media use, I think, can definitely have an impact. And a lot of things that we see are increased isolation, feeling disconnected. People talk about feeling more anxious. A lot of comparison can happen. So, you know, people put the highlight reel online and a lot of shoulds. I should be doing this. I should look that way. I feel badly because I didn't get invited to this party or this thing, and now I see it everywhere. Or people talking about, you know, bullying can happen 24/7 now that way. So anytime there's kind of an excessive use, and it can be really, it's designed in a lot of ways to be addictive, so people have a hard time putting it down. So we'll even see it impacting people's sleep. You know, they'll be looking at their screens and it's hard to put it down at night, or people feeling anxious, like, what if I miss a text late at night? You know, youth will talk about that, and I can't. What if I miss that? Or so a lot of anxiety can come up with that. And the other piece I'll say briefly is what I was mentioning before, when it impacts real life relationships. Sometimes in my work, I'll hear people really feeling anxious about, how do I say this to a person face to face? It's really, you know, they draft the responses, or it's very carefully constructed. And so again, thinking of that vulnerability of an in-person interaction is really scary. And so that's a big way I hear people talk about that in relationships. So thanks for asking that.
And for finish, Charles Wright, over there.
How does social media influence community engagement and activism?
That's a good question. I don't know if I mentioned when we first started, but I'm actually I'm part of the DFL. I'm an outreach officer in my district. I'm actually running for the state outreach officer position too right now. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. But anyway, as far as how social media influences and engages activism, well, I can speak from experience. You can utilize that tool and take advantage. You know, it can be to your advantage. Social media, especially if you have a cause in mind. I mean, what I do, because I'm part of another organization, so I handle the social media feeds as well. So I would just look for the communities that I'm trying to target, and I would invite myself, you know, to those communities, you know, all over the state, no matter whatever group of people I'm trying to target. I would join those community networks and just spread my advice, or, you know, whatever I have going on, and it can be very powerful. You know what I mean? So I encourage you youth leaders, you know what I mean, to get involved, especially if you want to get engaged in civic engagement. Let's raise awareness online in a positive way, and get that message out there, and it definitely will benefit you, you know, and your communities in the future. So that's a good question, but social media can definitely be used for, you know, a powerful resource if you use it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for your excellent answers. Right now, I want to share with us our new Carmen Robles and Associates magazine, Conversaciones de Salud. That's me in the folder. You can check. Yeah, that's for January, February, and March 2025. And congratulations, Carmen. We are so proud of you. And thank you, everyone, for being here. For me, this is an excellent episode. Thank you now for being here. And yeah, with this, we're going home. Thank you for this excellent new chapter for Carmen, for Eric. Thank you. And yeah,